Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm Corey Price, for those of you who I haven't met. I'm the host of Creative Mornings Charlottesville. We are so happy to have you all here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for making zines. If you didn't make a zine, you can make a zine after. It was a lot of fun, especially coming from someone who is very nervous about drawing. And then I shared it with some people. But that's it. No more people. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and thank you again, Warren, for leading us through that, and, little creative start to the day. All right, so welcome. I should ask, who's new to Creative Mornings? If you could raise your hand. All right, whoop, whoop. Welcome. So Creative Mornings is in 223 chapters in 67 countries with 27,000 attendees per month, over 10,000 talks online, and 11.2 million video views. So we are really expansive. We're all over the globe, even here in little Charlottesville. Woo! I like the woo. So the theme of this month is truth. And we always have a new theme every month that is shared globally. So every chapter has a talk on the theme of the month. And first, I'd like to acknowledge our global partner and then our local partners. So our global partner is MailChimp. And MailChimp has a quick message. MailChimp and Company has put together energy management tips and a worksheet for agencies and freelancers to help them not only manage their time, but their energy too. If you're interested, you can head over to their website, do a little Google search to find MailChimp & Co., and check it out. And I'd also like to thank our local partners. So those are Worth Higgins and Associates, Ting, The Fralin, Willow Tree, UVA Arts, The Bridge, and New City Arts. So thank you to Studio X. Let's give them a round of applause. They can hear us through the door. And also want to thank Jacob Cannon in the back and Co-Suite. Thanks again for recording and documenting today. And without further ado, you've already met him, but I will introduce him yet again. So we are so pleased to have Warren Craghead III here today this morning. Warren lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, with his wife and 2 daughters. He likes to make pictures and has exhibited his work internationally. He also has published many works, including the Zurich Grant-winning Speedy, and several collaborations with poets and writers. He received an MFA from the University of Texas at Austin, a BFA from Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, and attended the Skowhegan School. So please join me in welcoming Warren.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I want to say thanks to Corey and everyone at who puts together Creative Mornings. I'm sure there's a lot of people that get together to give us free coffee, so that's good. And I want to thank Studio X for having us, and the Fralin for hosting us until, what happened this week. So it's been a tough week, I think. I work at UVA, and for a lot of people. So hopefully my weird work you're going to see today, where we talk about and just being together will be some solace for people who need it. So I'm glad that we can all be together. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my work. I just put this up to start it. You get to read a little book. And the subject of my talk is, can you guys see truth is lies is truth? And I thought it was funny that they asked me to give a talk about truth instead of any of the many academics and scientists in town here who are working with evidence and logic to uncover truths. Instead, they ask an artist who, I will freely admit, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm making it up as I go along. But as I thought about it, I said there are elements of truth that I find in my work, and so I'm going to talk about it through the lens of my work. However, as someone who has an MFA in painting, I'm contractually obligated to put this quote up. Does anyone know who said this? Who this quote is attributed to? Does anyone want to take a guess? Okay. Well, it's Pablo Picasso. And yes, I put his name in Comic Sans. I'm going to warn you guys. As I was putting this presentation together, I realized I could do all kinds of really stupid ways of putting type and making it fly around and stuff. So it's going to be annoying. I'm just warning you now because I went crazy and I'm not controlling myself when it comes to it. So yes, Pablo Picasso said this. And it's funny, in a way, Picasso saying this is great because when you think about a lot of things about him, including him and Brock and some others developing Cubism, where they take the three-dimensional world and make it on a two-dimensional plane, it doesn't look right, there's no facts there, and yet there's a truth there to it. Now, this is his, see, I did it right there. This is his actual real name, right? This is his full name, and this is in Spanish culture, you have a lot of names. And as I understand it, his shortened last name is actually Ruiz. And so, as a kid, he was Pablo Ruiz, and he signed his first paintings that way, but he changed it to Picasso because it was more unique and fancy sounding, I think. And so, I don't know, it's still a truth, I guess. Now, a lot of other people have also taken this ball and run with it, including Picasso's friend Jean Cocteau twice stole from him and stole this quote. And so, as I was looking through it, I thought, this does reveal something. So even though I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm just making it up, there is some truth that I think will come out of looking at work and making it. This is the source. Okay, so before I get started, I'm going to go to the core of what I do, which is drawing. Drawing to me is the best, bless you, and I forced everyone to draw earlier today. I'm a real evangelist for drawing, and I think drawing is the dumbest and simplest and most basic way to make art. We all did it as kids. Some of us didn't stop, and those of you who did stop, you're welcome back on the team anytime. I'd love for people to draw. If I was sitting where you are now, I'd be drawing right now, drawing you guys. I drew Corey actually introducing me. This drawing you'll see the finished version of later on. There's Steve Bannon right there. I love drawing for a lot of reasons, and I draw in sketchbooks. I have one in my back pocket right now. I carry these all the time, and I make them just by cutting a piece of paper in half, folding it, and stapling it, and that's it. I don't get fancy paper anymore. I just use cheap paper and just draw with it, and that way it's always there to do things like document things, to remember things. My daughter was in a play, Fun Home. I drew, which we saw like 40 times or 50 times. I would draw her in the play. I draw when I'm at shows or when I'm at lectures. I draw at museums. I'll draw at the stoplights sometimes without looking, not while I'm driving, and not while kids are in the car. But I brought this up for truth because I also keep a daily log of everything that's happened to me and my family. So for 20 years now, I have this visual lexicon of what has happened. I could decode this for you to tell you what happened on this day. And it's a great way to have a kind of analog hard drive to go back to the things that you do. So I'm going to make one more little story about why you should keep a sketchbook or a notebook of some type if you're a creative person. So a couple years ago, in 2018, I was asked to do a piece for this comics anthology about climate change. And they asked me to do a piece that was not sort of quiet and very poetic like work that I would usually do for a piece like this. So I gave them one of this is a spread from it. There were several pages of a guy destroying a suburban neighborhood, a giant guy destroying a suburban neighborhood. And I had this idea because I remembered 20 years earlier I had done a little drawing in a sketchbook for a piece that I never did. So I dug through sketchbooks and I found it. And this is from 1998. And there's the guy. It's a little more, whatever. And he's trashing it. What's also great about this, it's just from 1998. There's the phone number of my old roommate, Frank. And also I drew a little drawing here. I just met this girl who I liked. And I drew a little thing of us hanging out because I was so happy to be with her, and we dated, and we got married, and we're still married here, and I'm embarrassing her right now because she's very... I've given this talk several times, and she's never been here for it, so... But it illustrates that when you go back and look at these things, like looking at photos on your computer or something, it's great to have this analog hard drive to drill down and to find things and to steal back from. Okay, so if you want to make books, it's very simple. I made this bit.ly link that links to my friend Julie Gaffair's site. She's a great artist herself, and it's just really simple, fold pages, staple them together, you can make a book. And like I said earlier, people love when you give them real things because we all get digital things all the time, but a real thing really has a lot of weight. Okay, so before I start with talking about the other stuff, I just want to give another warning other than the crazy type thing. There's going to be some drawings of some bad things. There's going to be some sadness in this. But at the end, we're going to come out of the darkness and into the light. At the end, there's really happy stuff that you'll see, okay? So bear with me as you see pictures of horrible stuff, because at the end, it's going to be full of rainbows and unicorns and niceness, okay? All right, so what did I do for this one? Yeah. Okay, so I came up with all these ways to think about truth and the work that I do. So the first is truth as news. So for the past several years, I've been drawing the news, drawing things that I see in the news. So I've drawn the Ukraine war since it started in February. Here's a selection of that. I'll draw from photographs. I'll draw from news reports. Sometimes things I just make up in my mind about what I've read about. 2 years ago, I was drawing the Black Lives Matter protests in Richmond. You can see I put little horns on top of Lee. A lot of times I'll draw this so that I can, sometimes so that I can make sure I'm looking at it, sometimes to emphasize things. One of the great things about drawing that's different than photography is I can pick and choose what I draw. I can make his head smaller, and I think there's a real power in that as well. I also drew the January 6th insurrectionists, and actually drew them on the weekly anniversary of their attack. I would draw them for a year, and then I put those together in a book I published earlier this year. Again, to not look away, to pay attention to things, to really see things. It's very easy to let things slide by, and I try to make myself look at them. Sometimes I'll be there in person, so we all know about August 11th and 12th in 2017 here, but a month earlier in July, the Klan came and did a little march here, and so I was there on the front gates yelling at them, right? But I was also drawing at the same time. I did field recordings of the helicopters overhead, trying to document it in another way. There were a lot of people taking photos. I was trying to document it in yet another way. I'll also do things from afar. So a few years ago, I declared myself the artist in residence of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And I was self-proclaimed in telecommuting, because I didn't go. And so I started drawing things. If people don't know, the World Economic Forum is where thought leaders and rich people and government people go to decide how they're going to try to rule us. Of course, we're very unruly. So this is Steve Mnuchin, our former Treasury Secretary. And so people thought I was real. They were like, wow, what a great gig, man. This is awesome. And meanwhile, I'm just drawing at them. And I put these together in a book called Runs on Blood. Again, I'm trying to draw the news, I'll talk about this later on, shine light on things that people don't normally see, and also make, hopefully, good drawings. I've done the same with Art Basel Miami, which is a big art fair in Miami, which I think has some good things, but also is kind of a gross distillation of turning people's creative work into marketable chunks of capital. So I drew that as well. It was published by the Ley Lines series. But sometimes it's nice things. So a few years ago, the punk band, or I guess post-punk, pop-punk band, Superchunk came to play here in Charlottesville. And of course, someone like me is going to go see them, right? So an old man. And as I was jumping around, I had my sketchbook out drawing. It was a miracle I didn't stab myself with a pencil. And then I put those together in a little book. And just this last Saturday, and I have the actual originals are right in my sketchbook right now. I went to see the local synth band, Personal Bandana, who I would suggest everyone listen to. They were playing at WTJU for free, and they were streaming online. And they were great musicians. It was great fun. And the whole time, I drew probably 100 Post-it notes, and then put them together in little comics. So it's always fun to go to shows and be able to draw nice things. So I'll draw news like these are election workers from last week, the unsung heroes of our democracy. And I also draw people in the news. This is Elon Musk, who's been in the news a lot lately. And I realized as I drew him, he kind of looks like the Joker. I don't know, someone else had to have come up with that before. But as I moved through this progression, I was like, oh my God, he's the Joker. He is an agent of chaos, too, at least in Twitter. Okay. So this all started drawing the news over 10 years ago during the Arab Spring. And I remember watching Tahrir Square in Cairo when the Egyptian people pretty peacefully got rid of their dictator, Hosni Mubarak. And watching them there was really inspiring. And I know it didn't always in the end, didn't turn out great for them. There's been a lot of trouble since. But at the time, it was really inspiring to see. And so I would, of course, I'm going to draw it. And I put it together in a book, trying to pay attention to the fact that I'm far away from there. I'm not part of that culture. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But at the same time, I can be inspired by it and excited about it and sort of high-five them, such as it is from here. So, okay. What's this one going to be? Ooh, yeah, okay. So it's amazing what you can do. All right, so another way I thought about it is truth is broadcast. So for me, that's putting work out into the world, getting around any sort of gatekeeping, getting off screens and putting stuff out into the world. So probably one thing people might have seen around town, what I did during the height of COVID, was these posters that I did about trying to get people to wear a mask. For me, I was trying to not finger wag at people, but rather inspire them with humor, especially people who would maybe be more reluctant to do it. So I hope I don't get in trouble, I commandeered, when these boxes are out here and nothing's in them, I'll just put images in them. So anyway. And then with the help of David from Telegraph Gallery, we made T-shirts and tote bags, which we donated the proceeds to some COVID charities. And so I really like making posters and just putting them up. These were ones after the 2020 election. I was so happy. You can see this is one from before the 2020 election, and then I did one after. And I was so happy, just spontaneously drew those on that day when we knew the victory and went around. So I should pause here and just say, I have a lot of political work, and there may be people who have different political ideas than me, and that's fine. I'm going to try to be less editorial in this talk and more just talking about the work itself, so we all can have different ideas. But these are my ideas. So this summer, after the Dobbs decision came down, I was really mad, so I drew Sam Alito and started putting these posters up here and I made stickers as well. In fact, I don't think I have any here, but I have a bunch of stickers that I put up as well. But sometimes I'll do little stickers. I had a bunch of extra sticker paper, so I'll draw little drawings and put them on gas, when I'm getting gas for the car. This is just one I drew. Also, this one, okay, I'll put up posters, and this is one where this is when Trump was saber rattling to attack Syria at one point. I put up this thing, and I didn't realize there was a cop right around the corner. This is right in front of the federal courthouse. I did this. So I don't know if you knew about that. Okay. But sometimes I'll do nice stickers too, right? So we're going to talk about Sun Ra in a couple minutes, but I'll do pictures about the great jazz musician Sun Ra. This is some door handle in a restaurant somewhere. I try to do this street art stuff that I draw on Post-it notes and leave them. I try to do the street art stuff in ways that can be easily cleaned up. I don't want to make life harder for someone else, so I don't draw on things with markers or anything like that. But I do want to leave stuff around and kind of, as Susie Gablet kind of says, and I'm sort of stealing this a little bit, to re-enchant the world or to add things out into the world, to get art out into weird spaces. So Post-it notes, drawing on leaves. I'm sure I freaked out, someone raking their leaves when I did that. But I try to let the work, roll out into the world. Okay, so I don't know what this transition is going to be, so hold on your hats. Oh, this is kind of boring. All right. This is Truth is Story. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Sun Ra. So there's a truth to stories that we tell about ourselves, even if they're not true. So those of you who don't know who Sun Ra is, Sun Ra was a jazz musician. He started out in the 40s, and he died in the early 90s. And his work kind of ran the gamut from sort of bebop jazz and Duke Ellington all the way through to really crazy free jazz experimental work. He was a musical prodigy and someone who I think was really influential in a lot of spheres in culture. I knew nothing about him at all. And about a year and a half ago, I saw that on Bandcamp, which is a website where there's a lot of music you can listen to for free, that there's over 100 albums of his to listen to. So I thought, it's the height of COVID, I'm working from home, I'm like, all right, I'm going to listen to all of these albums, I'm going to write about them, and then I'm going to draw about them. So I knew nothing about jazz. You could probably look at me and say, I listened to exactly what you think I would, like post-punk, indie rock, little bit of experimental music, synth and noise. Like that's really what I knew. So I knew nothing about jazz at all. And yet I learned, because I'm up to 89 albums now listening to him. And it is incredible, the work that he and his band make. So I would do all these drawings. And you can follow me on social media for this. It's also on my website, all this stuff here. Now, I bring him up with truth because Sun Ra well, let's just say there's facts about his life that a biographer would tell you. He was born in Birmingham, Alabama. His name when he was born was Herman Blunt. He, moved to Chicago, then New York, then Philadelphia. But if you ask Sun Ra, he would tell you he was from Saturn, and the music that they make was to communicate with the cosmos and to bring us all closer together. That there was a magic and an energy there that was really strong. And with absolute conviction, he would say this stuff, to the point where there's times when he denied he even had a human family, okay? There's one story where he was playing in Berlin, and he went outside between sets to talk to someone, and this car pulled up. These guys grabbed him, threw him in the car, and drove him off to the safe house. They were spies. And they started interrogating him, and they said, we know all about the American space program, NASA and all that. But you talk about the space program for African Americans. What is this? We don't know what you guys have planned. And he starts saying, being Sun Ra, like, oh, yes, of course. Well, when you play certain chords, you can communicate with the cosmos spheres, and you can bring yourself up to a higher plane of consciousness. And it took them a little while to realize, oh, okay, I got you. And they put him back in the car and took him back to the show and dropped him off. Now, he tells this story. That might not even be true. Who knows, But as I've listened to these albums, I believe him. I think he really is from Saturn. I know that the facts aren't there, but there's a truth there that he has in the music that I have come to really love. And some of it is so crazy, my family will never let me listen to it in the car or anything like that. My children will absolutely rebel, and yet there's a real freedom and strength there. And so the stories we tell ourselves can become a truth as well. Now we're going to do Truth is Light, right? Shining light on things. And to try to use drawing and art to really look at things. I don't know why that's not centered, but anyway. However, we're going to start by shining light on the cockroaches of the world. There's a project, I do these grotesque portraits of public figures. There's a whole series in them called Lady Haters where I draw misogynist ones. I started this years ago when the Virginia state government under Bob McDonnell was trying to restrict women's rights to get an abortion by making them have transvaginal ultrasounds if they wanted to have an abortion. And I realized that, for all the Mitch McConnells or Obamas or Bidens we talk about, all the people at the top people argue about, there's a lot of people in state government and local government who are doing a lot of things to us that don't get that light shined on them. So I started trying to draw them as well. So I also do a series called USA Haters where I draw about anti-American people. To me, un-American is people who don't live up to the ideals we tell ourselves about ourselves. So people who are racist, transphobic, homophobic, people who hate poor people. I know that all those things are deeply embedded in the American history, but I also know we should strive to get rid of them. And these people, of course, wallow in that stuff. So I got really good at drawing people really badly to the point where I don't think I could draw nice people. So I really worked at it, and I figured out I could do it. I made another series called USA Helpers. And these are people in government who are doing nice things for all of us. People who deliver our mail, who make sure the garbage trucks work, people who make sure that our food is healthy. The one I put up last week was a guy who works at the NEA, helping artwork get out into the world. So it was really hard for me to learn how to draw not horrible. And you'll see why in a second, because as much as I've drawn them, the person I've drawn the most is, of course, our old friend Donald Trump, who's been in the news lately, shockingly. So I drew Donald Trump for 4.5 years every day in a project called Trump. I started when he got the nomination in July of 16, and I drew until he left office in 2021. And I started out thinking when he got the nomination, I'll just draw him till November. There's no way he can win, right? And then he won. And so people on Twitter were trolling me like, are you going to keep drawing him, man? I was like, yes, because I'm stubborn. I'm a Taurus. So I started drawing him every day. And I remember when I first drew this one with no shirt on, thinking, oh gosh, I'm so transgressive. And I had no idea the depths I was going to sink to over 4.5 years. So as we went along, I started adding a cast of characters. Here's that drawing I was drawing earlier. I started adding a cast of characters, Steve Bannon and Michael Flynn. I started stealing from artists like Kathy Kollwitz and Goya and Philip Guston. And I started drawing not just about the things that he said and did, but what his minions would say and do, and what they were all trying to do to us. This is Mitch McConnell as a giant turtle eating people. I don't know how well you can see it, when they were trying to take away everyone's health care and Social Security and stuff that first summer. One thing I would suggest, if anyone who's creative, do a daily drawing or a daily project of whatever you do, because you start finding, if you force yourself to do that, you will find new ways to make things. You will find all kinds of things. I would draw in all kinds of different ways. These are from later on, near the end, when COVID was happening and being ignored or mismanaged. And all different ways of drawing, all different ways of moving around this stuff. Again, I'm sorry for these horrible images, but for me, it was a real struggle, but at the same time, I wasn't looking away. I was making myself look at what they were doing all the time. And then I realized one critique I had of myself was, am I part of this machine now, this Trump personality machine? And so I started trying to draw victims of what was happening as well. So for a while, I drew people who were being deported by ICE, some of whom had been here for decades, being good neighbors to all of us. I also drew kids. These are portraits of two of the kids who were separated from their families when they came to the border as legal refugees, applying for refugee status, and they were separated from their families. And then I also drew people who died in ICE custody. And I was really trying to find a balance between showing the horror of it and also being really as respectful as I could to what was happening. Trump is still here in all these pictures, but the drawing isn't really about Trump, I guess. However, sometimes it can be funny to draw Trump. This is a meeting at the Oval Office, I guess, or somewhere in the White House from a few years ago. This is Mike Pence, of course. It's kind of easy to draw Trump in a way. After a while, I started learning little bits of how you could draw him. You could take his nose out. If you ever want to draw someone poorly, take their nose out. It really is disturbing. Or ears off. It's really disturbing to draw them that way. What's that? Yeah, he's got all kinds of things going on here. And these were collected in 2 books. For the first year of them were collected, and there's more coming, called Trump, where you can see them in context with sort of explanations about what's going on and the quotes and stuff. These are from early drawings. Now, okay, so our next thing is truth is witness. Okay, so I've kind of alluded to this a couple times about witnessing. To me, that's, again, trying to take some responsibility for my part in it, or at least paying attention to what is going on. I guess one way for me to go into this is I did a project called Le Grand Guerre where I drew World War I 100 years later. So I started in 2014, 100 years after 1914, when Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were assassinated. And I drew every day what happened in the war. Sometimes I would follow people like Guillaume Apollinaire, the French poet that I'm obsessed with, or Siegfried Sassoon or Wilfred Owen, 2 other poets whose work I like, who were all in the war. George Braque was another one. And what was happening that day. Sometimes I draw from photographs. Sometimes I came up with a whole lexicon of iconography. This is the Eiffel Tower attacking, because that was France attacking somebody. So sometimes it'd be very cartoony. And what I found was, by drawing this stuff every day, I both learned a lot of history about it, but I also felt, in some tiny way, some weak, small way, how long it was, how long this thing went on, and how, some tiny piece of how tough that was. In the middle of it, I came upon this other thing called the Armenian Genocide. So, for those who don't know, the Armenian Genocide, right? So, in the waning days of the Ottoman Empire, as it was collapsing during World War I, they started persecuting a religious minority, the Armenians. And they killed tons of them. They drove them into the desert to die. I have family who's Armenian, and so I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know that much about it. And I knew as part of this World War I project, I didn't want to just draw one day about it, because it was bigger than that. And I was struggling about how to do it. And then I found out that our Genocide Remembrance Day is April 24th, which is my birthday. So I said, the universe is telling me something here, which is not a fact, right? But it's truth, I guess. And so I started drawing this every day, too, the genocide. So the history is a lot more scant on this, but I did find photographs, I did find people and histories that I would draw from, and I started drawing every day on this. I found new ways of drawing things. Sometimes I make little comics. I came up with all this iconography, again, of smoke and fire. There's going to be some tough drawings coming up where I would draw people. Sometimes I found a whole cache of portraits of people who were killed, and I would draw them. And I thought this, as I drew it, I realized this was a great thing to draw because I knew nothing about it. A lot of people had never heard of it or knew anything about it or the extent of it. And this is really from photographs. So I wanted myself to not look away and to be there to sort of shine a light on it. One photograph that kept coming up was this one of a woman and two daughters. This is in the desert outside Aleppo in what's now Syria. And from what I've read, the girl on the ground isn't alive anymore. And I kept coming up with this photograph and then turning away. I was like, I can't draw this. This is too powerful, you know. But then one day, I drew it. And then I drew it every day for a year. So a year of the project is me drawing from the same photograph. So if you think doing a daily drawing about something is intense, drawing from the same photograph every day is super intense. So you can see I started adding things to it, creating different things. Sometimes I go really crazy. In this one, the people are way back here because there's monsters all in front. And I started trying to, not look away and find all these variations on it as well. Another time I read in the history that 14,000 people were killed in a single day. So I did 14,000 marks that day on these index cards. And again, in some small, telescoping, very far away, very privileged way, I had some idea of the scale of it. You know, you write 14,000, it's one thing. You draw this and you get to realize there's a lot of people. So over time, I drew this for I think 4 years. I did it every day. Again, portraits of people, but trying not to look away, trying to witness, and trying to keep my eyes on it. I've done the same thing with other things like drone warfare that our government has done and supported in other places. During the summer of 2020, when all the BLM protests were going on, I also looked at a bunch of rebellions through history that I didn't know anything about. So like in South Korea, there was a big rebellion in the 80s and stuff like that, where I didn't know this history of stuff. And so this is from a slave revolt in 1803 when some people who had been taken to be enslaved broke free on the ship and killed everyone and took off. And you can read more about their history. It's really sad, but the Igbo tribe. Things that I never knew about, you know, and that I wanted to, again, draw about and try to use whatever tiny power my pencil has to put out into the world. And then finally, during the Syrian civil war, when Assad used chemical weapons on his people, I looked around for pictures to draw, and I couldn't find them. Finally, I did find some, and I drew them. And of course, I'm stealing from our old friend Pablo here from Guernica. But I drew pictures of people who had been killed by him in that way. Again, to not look away, to not be able to sort of just go on with my life. So I warned you it was going to get dark, but we're almost out to the light. So, but sometimes things can be happy. So I went to school at VCU for undergrad, and I remember when I moved there, seeing those statues on Monument Avenue. Those were very powerful pieces of propaganda. They worked, you know, and to see them take down the Stonewall Jackson statue was, to me, shocking and wonderful. So, of course, I had to draw it. It was a wonderful thing to witness and see that, you know, gesture. I know there's a lot more to go, but for that to happen. And sometimes it's not so political and dark. So this is a few years ago, my brother was sick, and I went to California to help take care of him and his family, and I decided the whole way there and the whole way back on the plane, I would draw every 15 minutes on my phone. So I declared myself the artist in residence of American Airlines Flight 1453. American Airlines will tweet back at you. I also declared myself the artist in residence at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. They will not tweet back at you. They do not care. But again, it was making me look around, making me pay attention, making me be a part of what was happening. Unfortunately, the app I used is no longer, it doesn't work anymore on newer phones because I love drawing with this app. Okay, so next we have, More fire. All right, so I also think I like being confused. I like not knowing what's going on. I think it's maybe it's just my default state as someone who's not that smart. But a big body of work that I make is what I would describe as poetry comics. So I take words and images and put them together and sort of mix them up in a 1 + 1 = 3 situation. And so a lot of times I don't know what's going to come out of it. I don't know how these images, both on the page, but also when I put the images together to make a book out of them, how they're going to work together. But to me, that confusion, that mystery, that wandering around and finding is a really important way to make work. I admire people who can plan and do things. That's great. That is not my way. So, but I wanted to highlight how sometimes truth can come out of things that you don't know the answer to when you start. Okay, now we're going to the nice stuff. I'm going to end on the nice stuff, everybody. So truth is love. So a lot of work I've done, I realized, is about me showing how I care about certain things. So I'll start here. This is a book I made for my brother's wedding. I was so happy. My daughter was the flower girl, and we were all there, and I was the best man. And at the wedding reception, I handed out this little book that I had made about them because I was happy that they had gotten married. And I also pay attention to my kids and keep track of things that they do and then draw them. There's like 300 of these now. You can see them online. The one will go up tomorrow on Saturday, where over the years, I'm trying to tell the story of these little girls who are now older. All this really happened. And what's shocking is my older daughter is 17, and she still does stuff like this. Like, it's not like... I thought I would run out of material. There's a lot of material still happening. I'll also, for their birthdays, I'll do little books to hand out to them and their friends as party favors. And so I will pay attention to the things that they are interested in or into at the time and move through that. So whether it's fencing or baking or whatever, I'll find ways. And here's a spread from one of those where my daughter had a Star Wars birthday party, and she was a Jedi, although she's also sometimes a Sith Lord, so that's another story to go through. I'll also draw postcards and send them to people. I started this when I moved away to a place where I didn't know that many people, and I was missing people, so I started just drawing on postcards and mailing them. And I send them now to people who are, people I know who are sick, or I miss, or I had a professor recently who passed away, but as he was sort of in his sickness, I would send postcards to him and his wife. And so I'll make a deal with all of you. I'll put a piece of paper back there, and if you write a mailing address on there, it doesn't have to be yours, I will send a postcard drawing for free to them. You can also DM me, or anyone who's watching this later, you can DM me and I'll send you a postcard. So it can be yours. Yeah, it's totally fine. I'm just saying if you want to send it out to someone else. I can't guarantee it's going to be great, but I do love drawing stuff, so hopefully it'll be good. And also, finally, I'll show you an expression of love. I draw these notes for my kids. I started when they were little. I put them in their lunches. And we were home from COVID. I would have these like sheets for them every day about what classes they had, and I would draw on there. You can see her in COVID school right here. I do these also for my wife now when she goes off to work. And for me, it was about putting a little, like I did with the work that I broadcast out in the world, a little secret thing that would open up, and they would open their lunch, and there's a drawing. There's some expression of it. And just a couple months ago, we had a show of the drawings along with Maris Brafkin and her kids. We were all in a great show together. And so seeing thousands of them up on the walls of Welcome Gallery at New City Arts, thank you very much, was a really wonderful way to see maybe I am not such a bad dad after all. I do love my kids. So finally, I'll just say this is from the Tahrir Square book. My advice to artists is kick it over, no one will guide you. Those are lines stolen from a Clash song. And everyone should go draw, and you can follow me there and see my stuff. So thank you.
If you've got like maybe a couple, yeah, maybe a couple, maybe more than a couple. If you've got anything born, feel free to ask.
Yes.
My question is, first of all, your work is amazing and your spirit is phenomenal.
It's the coffee.
I'm also a double DCU alum, so high five. What do you do to take care of your emotional state? Because you're doing I know you're doing free-spirited work, but you're doing deep work when you're painting or drawing the same, tough picture, for a year. What do you do to clear up the jams?
Well, I would say, and Corey and I talked about this before the talk, making things is a kind of, it's doing something about it, I guess. I know that seems real self-serving and kind of, in the larger scheme of things, it's sort of dumb, but there's an action there, so I'm not just looking at it, I'm actually doing something about it. But I think balancing out, while I was drawing that horrible stuff, I was also drawing those postcards and those lunch notes. And so I think I would do a mix of things every day. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It can be a hole you can fall in, I think. And so you have to pay attention to yourself as well. So I also have nice people around me, so that take care of me. So okay, yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
You. Comment is I love Goya and his story of being a court painter into being a sort of revealer of the horribles of the world. And it seems like you've done all that together, especially with your Trump stuff. So I love it that you skipped the 30 years that he took to get there, and you just sort of like jumped straight to...
Well, I've been drawing for a long time, so you've not seen the 30 years.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah. Okay, actually, and along those lines, my question is, yes, you draw all the time, and I love when you're talking about the space that it takes you in. Can you talk about then how you balance that with how you then document it regularly and put it out on Instagram? And for me, that's incredibly interruptive. How do you do that and make it work for you?
I would critique myself. I get mad at myself all the time because I want to put more books out, right. And it's just hard to do that. Phones have been great because I just take a photo with my phone and use Snapseed to like make it look a little bit better and put it out there. So I made a whole systems are really helpful in chaos, right? And so I have a whole system to go forward with that. But I agree with you. I think you can do all the drawings you want, but if you don't document them, for instance, the postcards, for a while during COVID, I was drawing like 25 a week and sending them out. And so to document all those, again, with my phone, just taking a photo, and I have a whole system in my computer to go through to get them up on the web, but I am years behind in putting that stuff online. So I feel you. I know what you're saying, but at the same time, I try to tell myself this. It's also important to get it out into the world and to be able to use it and share it. But I think setting up a system, for me, it's taking with the photograph and then I airdrop it to my computer. Like I have a whole system in place so I don't have to think about it, But I do wish I put stuff, like for instance, the photos have never been collected in any kind of print form, or the Trump stuff, it's only the first year. And so I've come to realize more and more, until something's in physical form in the world, it kind of can drift away. We're seeing Twitter just like fall apart right now. It could happen to anywhere where we have our work online. So I think trying to pull that back into the real world is something I'm trying to do too, struggling with. Yeah, something tangible that I can that my great-grandchildren can look at and say, what is wrong with this? What happened here? Okay. Oh, Sean.
You can push me off later.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, there are only so many Sun Ra records. You're going to be running out of those pretty soon. In terms of your sort of daily practice, right, you've been doing so many of these different kinds of daily practices, but let's hope then, you're not going to have to start drawing Trump again in a couple of years. You're going to start running to the end of the line on a couple of those daily practices, and I know you've already ended some of them too. Yeah. How much thought do you put into replacing those with other daily practices? Do you have previous daily practices that only went a week, and then you sort of let them die out? Is there something where you're thinking thinking ahead for
Oh, I want to get rid of them.
You want to stop?
I want to stop them because my eyes are bigger than my stomach, you know, and I frequently like set myself, oh, I'll draw this and I can draw this. There's one example when the Russian Revolution happened during the World War I thing. I thought, oh, I'll draw about that too. And that was just too much with the Armenian genocide and everything else. It would have been a great daily drawing project because it's a very dramatic story over that year in 1917 in Russia, what happened. But yeah, there's times when I have to just bail. The Armenian Genocide Project, it could have kept going, but things did kind of slow down as the war ended. And then there's a whole long history of that. But luckily, Trump got out of office, so there was a hard line there. And yes, I will hit the end of the Sun Ra. I'll just go back to the beginning. I'll listen to them again, but I won't draw them again.
You're
Yeah.
not thinking in your mind, you know, I want to find a new daily thing to do your thing.
No.
You just want to
It'll find me. I'll find something. Yeah. I'm drawing news now. There's always news, you know. But yeah, I try to, it can take over, you know. So, and then I find I don't make the books and I don't do the poetry comics and stuff because I'm so busy doing these other things. Yeah, Jeremy.
This is a, I guess, tactical process-based question kind of tied to that. When you're doing overlapping daily practices, how do you find time? Do you have a set time where it's like, every morning I spend 15 minutes doing this? Do you fit it in with everything else you're doing throughout the day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
You sleep.
Yeah, I sleep. So, for a while I do it at lunchtime at work, and I will admit to doing them in batches sometimes. I got behind on the Trump stuff and I would catch back up as I would have time. I would set up these systems, like for Armenian genocide, I would always draw them on index cards and I have them in my pocket and I'm waiting in line to get a coffee and I'll draw one, you know. I'll set up systems so that I can get these things done in a way. But yeah, there were times when I would be up late or I would be doing things at odd hours. You know, when you have kids and a family and a job and everything else, it is hard to do these things. So that's why I was like, well, for instance, the Sun Ra project is really stretched a lot longer than I thought it would because, you know, at the time I was working from home and so I'd listen to stuff while I worked and now I'm back in the office and so it's harder to do that. But yeah, I think setting up systems for any creative work you do so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, you just do that part of it can really be helpful.
I don't know if you can even relate to this because you're so creative. I have a hard time switching from the responsibilities of life, cooking for a family or, you know, exercise or, you know, all the stuff we all have to do to like the stuff that really feeds my soul, you know, like art. It seems like you just wake up and you're creative. Like I have a hard time getting my brain to give myself permission to do those things, and once I get in the studio, I'm like, oh, this is great. But anyway, do you have any tips on that? Like, maybe you can.
Well, okay, well, it's easy for me because I can just draw in the sketch. You should have a sketchbook in your pocket at all times. And I have stuff over there you can, if anyone wants to make them afterward, I have all the stuff to make them for you. So I think also, you know, we're talking about the daily practice. If you say to yourself, I have to fill up one page in the sketchbook every day, then you'll start doing it and it'll get integrated into what you do. And setting a time is good. Like I'm going to do this when I drink coffee in the morning when I wake up. But also, you know, I had a roommate who did giant oil paintings that were very intense, and he would work on them for like a year. It was just Frank. And very different artist than me. He couldn't do this stuff because he had to go to a studio and he had to have ventilation, you know, all this stuff. So I think maybe finding, I don't know what your work is, but I think finding a way to make it that simple place to get it jump-started into there. But, you know, some of it is just not thinking and just doing. I know for me, sometimes I'll have a to-do list and they'll be like, I'll go like, oh, I got a call to make an appointment to get the car fixed, and I hate making those calls, but I'll just do it. You know, I won't think about it, I'll just do it. So doing that with just drawing, but you should probably be drawing. I mean, everyone should be drawing. I mean, we'll make a sketchbook afterward. I'll help you make one. Okay. All right.
I'm so intrigued. Very early on, you had the daily the draw of your day, and you said that you can
You want me to decode it?
I would love it. Would you?
Yeah.
And can anyone else decode it? Have you created a legend for the grandchildren
She might be able
who
to.
are going to say how crazy?
Yeah, this would be like when I read a book about how they solved the mining list. It's going to be like a whole thing.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I don't know how to go. Oops, I won't do it. Okay. All right, I will decode this, and I guess this is the last thing, right? Okay. So I'll do this. I'll do this day. All right. Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right. So it's Tuesday. There's 2 dots for Tuesday. There's a moon for Monday. It's Tuesday. March, right? 3. 14th, and this is 2017. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, 2017. So there's 17 there. So some of this for. The bar's 10, yeah. And so for a while I was obsessed with pre-Columbian Mixtec and Aztec, or Mixtec and Mayan glyphs and ways that they would use images and words in a weird way. It was part of my whole Cubist obsession, whatever. Okay, so, gosh, I can't really see it that well. All right, so it's nighttime, and my wife is a little crown, because she's a princess, my princess. Sorry. And I'm the I, right? That's me seeing myself as someone who looks and draws, but also a reference to Philip Guston. And so we're sleeping, and then at 6:30 I get up, I talk to the kid. So Ginger, my daughter Ginger, her first name's Penelope, she's a pen. And then Violet is, of course, a flower. So we get up and we talk, and then I took Ginger to Venable, the All-Star. They're the Venable All-Stars, so she's at the Star School. And I think Annie went to her job where she worked at a medical office there. And then I took Violet to Walker. They were the Walker Wolverines. So I drew a hand with the 3 claws for the Wolverines. It's funny, too, because when we went to Buford, I was like, they're the Buford Trojans. I was like, no, they should be the Buford Buffaloes. So I drew a buffalo every time. I made it up. So then I went to where I work at the law school. That's the front of the law school, Clay Hall. And there I am. I'm tired, right? And I'm working. Then at noon, I can't tell what I did. Sometimes I eat a sandwich or something. I'll draw a sandwich, and then I work some more. Meanwhile, what's happening in the afternoon is Annie's going to she picks all them up and takes them home, or my wife. And then at 5, I come home, and there's different colors to different cars. So I was driving the white car, and she was driving the black car. And we come home, and then, what does this say here? I don't know what this says. We went somewhere, and then we're walking around. I think this is pre-dogs. Or no, it couldn't be pre-dogs. So probably Ginger was doing soccer. That's right. She was doing soccer practice somewhere, and then we're walking around, and it's kind of low res, so I can't really see. And eventually we go, I don't know where that is, actually. I'd have to see this for real, but we're drawing. This is still a car. It's just got giant tires because it looks cooler that way. And then we're talking, and we eat pasta, I think, and Annie came home too. And the girls are singing, and maybe they're fighting. That's what that little bit is. And then the girls go to sleep, and Annie had work to do, and I cleaned up, and then, I walked the dogs. This is back before we walked the dogs together because someone had to be home for the kids. And then eventually we go to sleep here. So that was that day. Yeah. And it developed over time. It's actually stayed pretty stable since this. I'm sorry, there's a couple parts I can't read, but yeah. Okay, is that time or is there anything else? Okay.
Maybe one last burning question, if there's a burning question.
Okay.
I will let you decide who's the burning question.
Laura.
Okay.
You can ask me after.
When you showed this at the beginning, I actually thought so much about systems before you mentioned it in terms of your daily practice. And I think as artists, we all kind of create systems to make us be able to do the work that we can do, to give permission or figure it out. And so this system of like hieroglyphs or symbols is just a system within another system to talk about maybe this is not the conscious system, but other thing is the conscious system, and so kind of thinking about it all that way is really fascinating in terms of the way most artists work or creative people work. You figure out a way to be able to make things work.
Yeah, inside the structures that you're in, whether it's a job or family or and making systems is important. So that are sustainable for everybody, hopefully. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Well, let's give them
Thank
a round
you.
of applause.
All right, that's it for this morning. Thanks again for coming. Have a great weekend. I know it's cold. I flew back here from LA. I'm like, no, no. So I hope you have a warm, sunny weekend and see you next time.